Hello and welcome to another episode of Crushing Comics, the show where I fall in love with my comic book collection all over again. I have our next selection here, and it is a smaller omnibus. What should we talk about today? I didn't come with a plan. Let's talk about this shirt for a second. So this shirt, which I think is very, very cool, is from, I believe, the web store of Black Nerd Girls, and I was very, very happy to support them by buying the shirt by an artist that they clearly had worked with to commission the art. It happened to be on one of these sites where you can peddle such things, and I wanted to get some other cool shirts, but the problem with that is that so many people rip off art from other artists to put on their shirts, and they're making money off the shirt that they just, like, took this photo or picture from someone else and just put onto the platform and are selling. They haven't done anything. They copy and pasted a piece of art. That's the only thing they've accomplished, right? And it's impossible. I mean, if it's hard to find copied music, the people in the background in videos on YouTube, at least there's, you know, a whole music industry that's built up technology to detect copied licensed music. But when it, oh gosh, this is really in there. But when it comes to art, that's nearly impossible to detect. And even if there was some great way to detect it, how do you even know if something is truly a copy or if it's a, you know, a fair use version of something else, like after the art of blah. And we see this all the time in like Twitter threads that blow up of an artist who's discovered that their work has been copycatted by like a big chain store who's using it on a shirt or something. Like, people just think that whatever you Google search and find is an image that you can use. I actually worked with the data of one of these companies, and they really do care about fraud to a degree, like to the amount that they can figure out who's using the things wrongly. They want to take care of it because it's not good for them. It's liability, right? But it's impossible to just programmatically detect. And so you have this whole culture of people who now just think that, like, if something is an image, it's available everywhere, right? You can see it in like blog posts who will just use a picture from any old other blog post, or a news organization who will just run people's Facebook photos from their personal profile if they happen to be in a news story without their permission. And it's hard to navigate. Like, even as somebody who's worked in those roles and had to care about those things, sometimes I find myself being like, I just want a damn picture of this damn book for my blog post. So certainly somebody's taken a picture of it. But no, you've really got to find out who took it and the fair rights use of it and things like that. So I guess the upshot of the story was, I love that there was an organization that is commissioning artists to do cool original art, and that you could buy a piece of that cool original art on a shirt and have it for yourself. I would love to have a whole closet of t-shirts that are from like original artists who are actually getting compensated for the art that they do. And it's hard if you want shirts of like your favorite comic book characters, because if you do and Marvel and DC haven't licensed that particular shirt, then you're getting this bootleg stuff. And hopefully you can find somebody who's actually illustrated their own version. Oh, how cool. Okay, this is the first of the Master of Kung Fu omnibuses starring Shang-Chi. And this gives me a chance to talk about some stuff about Shang-Chi that I haven't already. You can see this one is open. So I've actually already read some of this. Oh, it's so good. So this was written by Doug Moench, who pretty much writes all of Shang-Chi until the very end. And the art here is by a few different people. It's by Paul Glacci. It is by Jim Starlin. Oh no, Starlin didn't draw it. Starlin just wrote it. Yeah, but Doug Moench writes the majority of it. Steve Englehart wrote him in Special Marvel Edition. So this is actually something to talk about. Back in the 70s, when Marvel was going through this burst of creativity where they were able to use the horror characters again because of the easing of the comic code, but also because they had licenses that they could do stuff like Shang-Chi, and then also because they were trying to just innovate and create a new wave of characters to meet the increasing popularity of comic books and slowly the beginnings of the direct market, had these anthology books like Marvel Premiere and Marvel Spotlight, what was this one called? Special Marvel Edition, that they just would run a couple of stories of a certain character, and if those stories caught on, then maybe the character would graduate to their own series. Sometimes one of the characters would take up like long-term residence in one of those series. Killraven is an example of that. He never graduated to his own series. He just stuck in one of these series for like 20 issues or so. But this is how Ghost Rider was born and spun off into his own. This is how Shang-Chi was born and spun off into his own. And then some people didn't spin off. I think Tigra was in one of these as the cat. cat. There's one that was like all about monsters, and not all of the monsters turned into Tomb of Dracula. Some of them just were in this for a few issues, and those are covered actually in Marvel Horror Essentials, which are really a fun 2 Essentials editions. But in this case, Marvel clearly wanted to be doing something with this license that they acquired, so they were using that initial issue, which was written by Steve Englehart, as the jumping off point to get Shang-Chi into his own title. So Englehart writes Special Marvel Edition 15 and 16, and then the first 2 issues of Marvel Master of Kung Fu, which it turned into and kept its numbering with 17, 18, and 19. And then Doug Munch takes over and writes for the remainder of this. The other writers are for like additional issues that are pulled in from elsewhere. And the majority of the art in Master of Kung Fu is by Paul Galacci. Jim Starlin drew Special Marvel Edition 15 and 16, Master of Kung Fu 17 and 24. Okay, enough of reading from the table of contents. Here's the other thing that I think is really interesting about this that Marvel did very right. Marvel announced this series of omnibuses all at once. It was at a retailer's breakfast or lunch or something, and they broke the news that they had the rights and they were going to reprint all of this series. They said there's going to be 4 omnibuses. They didn't tell us there were going to be an additional 2 omnibuses for Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, but that also wound up happening. And when you tell people, I am going to put this out, you'll have the ability to buy all of it, that does good things for your sales. They know how long it's going to be. They know they're definitely all going to come out. And the sales of these were strong. They were really quite strong. And a lot of people like me who have never read the material went in on it because they knew that they could get the full set of the books. And it got to the point where the variant covers, which these are, the classic versions are the variants, they were super, super scarce. And there were like, fights breaking out in the proverbial virtual aisles of these websites. And in one case I remember the cover for the second or third one went out of stock because Marvel had short shipped it originally and they had more of it, and people on the second day were paying like $150 for the variant cover, more than the cover price of this book, which like never happens with omnibuses. So Marvel managed to create demand in a market by saying we are definitely going to complete the series, we're definitely going to put it out. Now you look at DC, who has like the opposite problem where they solicit things and then just cancel them. DC's not even good at following through. Marvel very rarely cancels a collection once it's been solicited. DC, or DC will put out 1 copy of a collection and then quit. And probably if they said, look, this is going to be 5 long, but you have to like make, if the sales of the first one persist, or it's just going to be 5 long, they would be able to sell it. So why am I yammering about this? Marvel, for whatever reason, has not taken this approach with anything after Shang-Chi, other than maybe their classic Star Wars materials. They've never said for anything else, we are definitely going to put this out. They put out a volume 1, and you kind of keep your fingers crossed for a volume 2. It just happened with the Jonathan Hickman Avengers. We got volume 1, and like on all the comic groups that I'm on, it's like a steady drumbeat of questions of when is there going to be a volume 2. And I'm somebody who really looks at data in these questions, and I'm like, well, let's look at how long it took to get a second of the Jonathan Hickman Avengers, right? What's the minimum time that Marvel's going to take? But then you have a lot of naysayers who also are using data and saying Marvel never released a second book of Brian Bendis' new Avengers Omnibus, so who knows if we're ever going to get a second Hickman. As it turns out, this year we're going to get a second Hickman Omnibus, and what's kind of a volume 2, which I've talked about in the past over the Bendis Omnibus, which is the Secret Invasion Omnibus. But why can't Marvel do this more often, right? I'll talk about a little bit more maybe when I open one of the final ones of these that we still need to open, which is, actually there's 2 more of these to open, about I think Marvel could be doing a better job with these. They are boutique releases. They sell less than 10,000 copies each to a very specific, very rabid set of fans, such as myself. And I think if Marvel really wanted to, they could probably do a lot better in making sure they get bought by the right people. But that's a topic for another time. So do I recommend this book? I do. I think this is really interesting, and it starts out, again, very decompressed. In the first issue, Shang-Chi is on a mission for his father, Fu Manchu, and in the course of this mission, he realizes he is the bad guy. So this kid, there's no like extended arc of like worrying about if he's on the good side or bad side. It kicks it right off and it sends it right into him trying to figure out what is he going to do about his evil father. So I think it's a really cool story. I think it's got beautiful art if you like Silver Age art. And it's, and you know what? If you want these omnibuses, they're not going to be around for a really long time. They're already getting more expensive. But if you don't have one, guess what? This year, a big portion of this book, possibly all of it, is coming out in an epic collection. So Marvel's going to follow up the omnibus printing with a set of epics, which they'll probably be able to cover these 4 omnibuses in 4 or 5 or 6 epic collections over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. And epic collections mark another way that Marvel says, I promise I'm going to put out this whole series. And that's why you have people like me who are a freak who want to buy every single Epic collection. So without any further ado, let's go to the ceremonial shelving of Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, volume number 1. It's going to fit right down here with its friends. We still have to find volume 2. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Crushing Comics. Thank you for watching, and thank you for helping me fall in love with my comic book collection all over again.